are listening to the Moody Girl podcast with me, Emily Fazer. I'll be opening the minds of experts, enthusiasts, and storytellers, discovering their secrets on health and how to make the most out of life. So welcome listeners to another episode of the Moody Girl podcast. Today I am joined by someone really special, Daisy Harvey, who is a friend, entrepreneur and founder of the Loom App that gives people sustainable ways of designing their own wardrobe. Welcome to the show, Daisy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. You and I go way back. We kind of met quite a few years ago. Lost contact, and since then we've both been doing quite different things from what we were doing a few years back, and I've been admiring your work from afar. So first of all, congratulations on that.
Oh, thanks. Same to you as well.
And I think, I don't know, if I think back to it, I think the reason that we always got on really well is because we were quite similar in the way that we always had dreams. We always kind of spoke about things that maybe we quite wanted to do or ideas that we had. And I think that's kind of where you naturally gravitate towards if you're naturally entrepreneurial minded or you have that creative spirit inside of you. And I think maybe back in the day we were a little bit lost,
Yes. Yeah, I think that's fair.
So I think, we ended up doing things in our 20s, going to parties and, that scene in London, which, ultimately we both knew that we didn't really want to be doing for the rest of our lives. So it's really nice to now see, I don't know, see how much we both have evolved and especially you. So I mean, I kind of wanted to talk to you about how you've transitioned from, when we were chatting a while ago, I remember you were in a job and it was quite stressful and you're watching people around you and, getting promoted and I felt like you were just really down on yourself. And you're like, oh, it's tough. And then now I'm like, Jesus, this girl is like elevated, you've started your own business, you are doing public speaking. Can you talk to myself and the audience? How did you get to that shift? What shifted for you?
Yeah, I think it was a bit out of necessity as well. So I think if I look back to when I started the big change in my life, where I then started my kind of like new career, if it were,
Mm,
um, it was like you said, I wasn't in a very good place mentally. I was prioritizing kind of the wrong things and hadn't really thought about. I mean, if you'd asked me at the time, I was definitely thinking about my career and what I wanted to do. But I think I put a lot of limits on what that could have been. And so I was in like a job at a big corporate company. I didn't really agree with like the way that they were promoting people, but I also wanted to fit in and kind of get that promotion. Um, and like a lot of things were changing in my personal life that made me actually just kind of take a step back. I think I'd got really stuck in the detail of everything that was like my day-to-day life, which actually wasn't making me that happy anyway.
mm,
And taking that step back and just kind of like reevaluating what do I enjoy, what am I passionate about, and if I could do anything, what would that be? And I
mm,
think taking those baby steps into that is what really sparked it. And then since then, although I might not be, just is where I want to be right now, like I still want to be like super successful, and I've still got all these different goals. But because I'm working towards those, and I'm really confident that that's what I want to do, I
mm.
really enjoy it, and I'm in a much better place.
100%. It kind of just feels, and this is the word that has been I guess for even just the past month for me, because
Mhm.
there's still been self-doubt and, that kind of creeps back in when you're trying something that's maybe a little bit out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
But for me, it feels like you found alignment, like you have found that thing that just feels right,
Yes.
and it's a
Yeah.
passion and you're just going for it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's definitely like self-doubt is still a huge thing that I have to kind of get over almost every day and like
Mm,
just really be positive about things. but I'm just so excited about what I'm doing. And
Mm,
that is, yeah, I think that word alignment is the key thing. Like I know that I'm doing something that I'm really passionate about and enjoy, and have that like gut good instinct about it. And I
mm,
think that's, even in terms of like, so a few years ago I was very depressed, and and suffered a lot from anxiety. I feel in a much better place mentally now. Still suffer a lot from anxiety, but not from depression. And I think big part of that is, one, a lot of therapy, but also
mm.
from doing something now that I feel really aligned with, and it's aligned with my values, and like I really enjoy it and I'm passionate about it, and I'm not putting my energy into something that wasn't quite right. And I think that was a
Mm.
big part of that.
Absolutely. And I think like, so I started this podcast series to kind of look at health. And that was like during the pandemic, kind of stripped everything back. And actually, it was like the key to, for me to kind of look at myself as like a whole human being rather than everything else that I'd kind of layered on myself as like my personality and stuff, you know?
Yeah,
Um, but I just feel like, you know, the more I'm speaking to people, and even when I look back at where we were, like, you know, no matter how good we're being with our like exercise routine or what we're putting into our body, if we're going to a job that's fundamentally making us miserable every day, then
yeah,
like your health is going to be compromised, you know.
yeah,
And I think that's what stands like true with you. And I think like this is a message that I really wanted to kind of, you know, portray to any listeners out there. So if you're stuck in a job, if you are investing in your health, but you're still feeling, you know, down, maybe depressed, maybe anxious, the kind of big area in your life that you might need to look at is your career. You know, are you doing something that you're passionate about? You know, are your morals in line with the company? If they're not, then it's quite likely that you're going to be feeling a little bit crap, you know?
yeah. And you do spend so much time at work.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing that you kind of forget as well. So, like you're just saying, even if everything else outside of work is good, like you do spend so much time, and it's going to have a massive impact on you.
100%. I mean, I think I saw like this study or like this, I don't know, I'm not going to give you complete perfect numbers here, but it was like the amount of time that we spend, I think it went from like 18 and then all the way up to like 50 or 60 or something. And by the time like 18, it's like time we spend with our friends and family, it was quite high. And then you go to like 20s and it's like time with friends and family gets less, people, colleagues gets really, really high. And then like towards the end of our life, it's still like with your colleagues, I'm like, oh my God, are we like actually spending more time with our colleagues than our like spouses, than our best
Yeah.
friends? And it's true, we actually are. So it
Mm,
is important. Which brings me to my next question. So, I mean, anyone out there who's listening, they might be in a situation that you or I have been in the past, where they're feeling really trapped at work. They've maybe got an interesting idea or they've got a passion, but they aren't quite sure what to do. I know that you've worked for some really incredible fashion brands, and I don't know if this is 100% right, but on LinkedIn, I saw that you have now quit and you're now working fully for
yeah.
yourself. So one, like, how did you make the decision to take that leap of faith? And also, what would you suggest for anybody else who wants to take that leap of faith as well?
So I think for me, it was, so I've done it twice. The first time, I had a business that was already working, and I it just got to a point where I was like, okay, I had some I had a startup loan, and I was like, okay, I'm going to put everything into this business. And then that's what evolved into my new business. But while that was kind of going through that transitional change, I had to get another job.
Mhm.
And this time, it kind of felt like the wrong thing to do, to take on like another stressful job, which I'd left previously. But it was kind of a necessity. And then I've been there only like 10 months, but it was getting back into the same routines. And like I was just trying to do two businesses at this, like my business and then my normal day job. And it was just getting too much. So this time it was because my health was starting to suffer again.
Mm.
Um, and I was like, this is just too much. So that's why this time I decided to quit, and I'm trying to raise investment at the moment, and it's a real leap of faith. And maybe that's not the wisest thing for everyone to do. But I'm confident everything's going to work out. I think if you are in a job and you have an idea and you're not sure what to do next, I think it's just investigating it and just being curious and just doing something, anything, like anything small. So I think a really good thing to do is to reach out to people who share that interest or who maybe are experts and ask to go have like a quick call or a coffee with them. And I think even that will spark more ideas for you and then just start to build on what you could do with it. So I think speaking to people about it, going to like events and just putting yourself out there will help one, you feel more confident about the idea, but also other people will have ideas for you about what you could do. So I think that's a really good place to start.
I've always admired that about you, in the way that I feel like you've always, even though we were kind of mixing the same circles where we were partying a bit back in London, blah, blah, blah. But even when we were doing that, you always kind of were adventurous and curious enough to try out something else. And like, how old were you when you went to Paris and lived there for like a year or so? That was amazing.
Yeah. Well, that was out of necessity for my degree, but yeah, I did enjoy it.
But yeah, I feel like having, as we get older, it's like drummed into us a little bit to like be safe, and like especially with like the cost of living crisis. And of course there is a cost of living crisis right now, but I'm finding that it's like adding more stress for staying in jobs that people are really unhappy at, because it's like, oh god, I could never dream of doing something like starting my own business. It's a cost of living crisis. That's what everyone's saying, and yes, things are expensive. But yeah, I think having that curiosity and confidence in ourselves can really begin to just shift something.
Yeah.
And that's so
And
for you. Sorry, you go.
yes, I was just going to say, maybe you don't need to start your own business. Maybe just
Mm.
from like chatting to people who do share whatever you're passionate about, they might hear of a job, and then you could just change careers to do something you're really passionate about, but not have that stress of it being your own business and everything relying on you. So
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, actually, because you don't have to start your own business. It might just be that you need a shift in what field you're already in.
yeah, yeah,
Totally. So I wanted to give this opportunity now for you to introduce your business a little bit more to the Moody Girl listeners. So Daisy has started the Loom App. Could you tell us a little bit more about the concept behind it?
yeah, sure. So I used to have a sustainable fashion marketplace, which was brilliant. But what I discovered was that my customers, although they wanted to shop more sustainably, they still couldn't find the exact style that they wanted, or it didn't fit correctly. So I started working with the designers I knew to make custom made clothes. And the process was so simple, everyone really enjoyed it. And that really gave me the idea for the Loom app.
Mm,
Um, and
so
I think
cool.
we could make this like really simple, so you could just go online, fill in a form of what you want, and then designers could reach out to you, and you could like co-collaborate with them on the designs. That would be really fun, and I don't think anyone else does that.
Mm,
Um, so that's where the idea came from. And I applied to some business accelerators and got accepted onto one by Fashion Revolution,
wow.
in circular fashion brands. And I was like, okay, there's something really in this, and this is quite unique. So I decided to stop my old business, because there's quite a few different marketplaces out there, and it felt like there was something really unique and special about Loom. Um, and just been building on that. I mean, on and off for like the past 18 months, but the
Wow.
last 6 months been really focusing on it. And now um, raising investment, and a month ago launched our first like basic website, our MVP, which is like a work in progress, but really exciting to see people using it. So yeah, but basically what you can do is if you want anything custom made or bespoke, you go on, fill in a form, add some photos of inspiration, when you need it by, and then all of our designers can contact you, and then you can decide who you work with and have that custom made for you. So
Honestly, it's so cool, Daisy. I'm just
oh,
like,
thank you.
God, it's so, and every time I see photos of you now, I'm like, God, she looks insane. Like your outfit's just incredible. I mean, the fact that you're just getting bespoke custom clothes now, I think it's, and I think you're completely right. It's totally a unique concept. It's a way for people also, it's actually making people become creative again, you
Yeah.
know?
And I think especially in fashion, and now I'm going to get really into my like sustainable fashion mode, but I think a lot of us have fallen out of the idea of fashion that it's really personal and that people are making those clothes. So like we go now
Mm,
into shops on the high street, there's so many of the same clothes there, and the prices are obviously vary, but if it's super cheap, we don't even really think about what's happening for those clothes to be so cheap and what must be
mm,
happening to the people down the supply chain. So I think with this custom made clothing, you're working directly with that designer. You're having your creative input on it as well. So it's going to be super unique for you, but also you're supporting people who it's their trade, it's their whole job, and I think that's a really nice feeling as well to know that you're supporting other independent businesses all the time, rather than like a massive fast fashion company, which although we don't think about it, does have a lot of implications when you're buying from somewhere like that.
Honestly, I think absolutely. And also like just having that connection is bringing connection back into our clothes, and
Yes.
that's something I haven't thought about too much, and to be honest, even from this conversation now, I'm going to be like thinking more about how to shop sustainably. I mean, I've always been into vintage. It just takes, I think, as you say, when it's like fast fashion, we're so used to everything at the click of a button now.
Yeah.
But this is more of like a process,
Mhm.
and then I think also you have like quality pieces in your wardrobe that you're going to have forever, that you can maybe even
Yes.
hand
Yeah.
down to your children and say like, I designed this for a particular event, and I was like, worked with this fantastic designer. I think it's honestly such a cool concept.
No, that connection piece is so true as well, because when you know the designer that's made your clothes as well, like they are so special to you, and then if something happens, you can easily get it altered and fixed or
Mm.
changed into something new. So yes, excited about it.
Love it, honestly. I can't wait to see how it progresses. And yeah, like huge congratulations. And obviously after this as well, I'll make sure that I put all your handles in so everyone can listen, and also look up your brilliant website. So yeah, so obviously like this is such a, you know, it seems like quite a big task and operation to get off the ground.
Mm.
How do you stay focused on your goals in kind of bringing this business to life?
So I think I'm so passionate about it that it's not like a chore to work on it. But I think in terms of the focus of what to be working on, it's similar to what we spoke about before. I think not getting too wrapped up in the day-to-day running of it, and just making sure to like take a step back and think, okay, I've got a set amount of time today. What's going to have the most impact? So I
Mm,
think that's a really good place to start. Is like just work out, okay, um, what's basically just asking myself that question, like what's going to have the biggest impact. And something I've really learned as well is just speaking to people and go, and again like just not being too isolated when I'm working on it, because I find that the more people I speak to about it, the more ideas I get, and the more I find I know where to take it. I think if you have your own business, or even if you're just like any situation really, I think speaking to people is a really great thing to do, because you'll get different perspectives, new ideas, and I think it's really helps to keep you motivated.
mm.
Um, and as a very introverted person, that hasn't come naturally to me, but it's definitely been one of the biggest learnings. Like get as many people involved as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it's funny because I feel like you've always kind of said you're introverted, but I feel like you're not, the fact that the fact I feel like maybe like an underlying, maybe that was in the past or when you're younger, I think I'm naturally a little bit introverted as well, definitely.
Mm.
But in the way that you approach things, I think that you can really handle a situation, and like you just completely like owned this, and like you're public speaking now. Like, how do you find that, like public speaking when feeling so introverted?
I think I think with the being introverted, it's not so much the speaking to people I find difficult. It's more afterwards I'll be knackered.
Yes, okay.
It wouldn't come naturally to me to go and, speak to a group of people about something I'm doing.
Mm,
However, I've learned that so much good comes from it that now I really enjoy it and look forward to it. But I'm not the kind of person that can like go and like socialize all weekend. Like I need quite a lot of time to recharge. So I think that's the side of it that comes through. But with the public speaking, I actually really enjoy it. I get very nervous, but it's always good, I think, to put yourself in those positions. And also, I'm just flattered that people want me to speak at things, so I'm always like, yeah, definitely, I'll definitely do it. So yeah, I think it's good for growth. So
absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I think like I don't know, the more and I think it's like this cliche thing where it's like outside of your comfort zone. I don't know what
yeah,
the actual phrase is, but it's like, I don't know. But I
yeah,
have found that like you get so I don't know, the mundane is where, life becomes so boring and
yeah,
stagnant. But then when we are just taking risks and believing in our ideas and talking about it, and even if that does make us feel naturally quite nervous, naturally quite anxious,
mhm,
these are all for the greater good, you
yeah,
know. And also
definitely.
your business is doing, something, the kind of mission statement of it is that you're trying to, promote living and buying sustainably. So it's like that's also a huge important topic. And then it's also your passion at the same time. So it's like so infused with like where your morals are at.
Yeah, and that definitely makes it easier because if I'm doing like talks on like sustainable fashion or anything like
Mm.
that, it's something I could talk about for a really long time. So it's not like a difficult thing. It's not like I feel like, oh, I don't know what I'm gonna say.
Yeah,
It's-
totally. And like, I don't know, I've been exploring the ideas of like basically if we start kind of nurturing our inner child a little bit more and start like listening to our inner child rather than this like adult body that we walk around in, like ultimately we're all kind of in there as our inner children. And if we strip it back and listen to that inner child and what they were enjoying as a child and things that used to make us passionate,
Mhm.
do you think that fashion was that for you back in the day? Like what were your passions as a child?
Yeah, I think it always was. I remember, I don't know how old I must have been, maybe like 10 or 11. I wanted to be a fashion designer, and I
Oh,
sent a letter to Amanda Wakely, who I don't know if you know who she is, but she's a fashion designer, and she actually wrote back a handwritten letter. I don't know if it was
no
actually
way.
from her or someone who works with her, but with like their most recent lookbook. So yeah, I think it's something I've always been interested in. I think also as a child and a teenager, I wanted to be an actress, which doesn't really fit with me at all. So that's what I was really working towards. But yeah, I think definitely like your inner child. I think that comes in with like just being playful as well. Like
Mm,
even though it's a really serious thing to like run your own business or whatever your career is, it's really important that you enjoy it and don't take things too seriously.
yes.
I mean, especially working for like big companies where everyone kind of gets swept up into like how do I describe it? Just like the day-to-day kind of atmosphere and like the business goals, you kind of get swept up with like things that aren't in the grand scheme of your life aren't that
Mm,
important, and you shouldn't get too obsessed with or like upset over. But it's really hard if that's what you're the environment that you're in every day. And I think stripping it back and like trying to be more playful and curious with stuff and putting stuff into context helps as well.
100%. I think like, and I honestly resonate with that so much because, without realizing it, you can get so sucked into like office politics,
Yeah.
into like, and you're taking it home with you. So not only are you spending potentially 9, 10 hours of your day, depending on hours, um, within this environment using your energy up, then you're going home and you're like watering essentially that energy even more and just like
Yeah.
putting it in your house environment. It's just like, when are we going to step back and take time for like what we want in the grand scheme of our lives? And I think that's why I found your story so inspiring, because it was almost just like, you're like, well, do you know what, I'm gonna effing do it. And I just really rate that, and I think it's so cool. And like, yeah, and like also I just think, if we invest, say, like 9 hours a day, 5 hours a week for another company, and whether that's making money, whether it's marketing, whether it's accounting for the company, whatever your role is within that company, you're investing that amount of your life every single week to somebody else's success. And yes, you might find success in that company. But imagine if we could, if we had, and I know this is a luxury, but if we could do that for ourselves. And that's what journey you're on right now, which I think's like so brave, but also that you've just found something you feel so aligned with. So yeah, just so cool. I'm so happy for you.
Thanks. But I think as well, like if you're in a job and you like I think having that like like you were saying, looking at your inner child and like having that bit of a step back and that perspective of your job can also help you succeed, because I think it gives you more of a, if you can be more calm and you can kind of focus on things easier and not get swept up with things, I think it can really help you with your career. If you're really happy in your job and you want to stay somewhere and excel, I think it's also
Hmm.
useful for that
Hmm.
too. I think it's just having
Absolutely.
that, like that perspective. And I think like the people I've worked with who have been most successful and had the biggest impact on people in these big companies are people who are calm and like
Hmm.
can inspire people to get stuff done, but they don't have like a bad energy around them. Do you know what I mean?
100%. I know what you mean. And I think, it's very easy to fall into like negative thought patterns if you're in like the same role for a while. And I think everywhere you work, every job that I've had, without realizing it, you can fall into like, you know, bad talking and, oh God, what else could I be doing with my life? And yeah, but then you do get those certain few, and I think you're right, where like, I don't know, I think they're like, I would call them expanders. Like when you're around them, you want to be the best version of yourself, because they are somebody who's promoting like a peaceful environment, like positive role models, like leading by example, that
Yeah.
sort of thing. I think you can definitely get those. And if you're listening and, you know, maybe the environment that you're working in, you found yourself slipping into maybe negative thought patterns and discussions at lunchtime, maybe you could start rethinking that, and you could be one of the expanders and being that positive role model through your own work. So yeah, I think that's a really important point actually, Daisy, because you know some people are entrepreneurial minded, and some also might want a career working for somebody else. And I know you can find so much contentment in both of those options.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I wanted to also delve a little bit into self-doubt.
Yes.
So
Cool.
you're like, what? I didn't realize it was a therapy session today. I know I struggle with it. I definitely struggle with it more throughout my cycle, my luteal phase, especially, the latter stage of my menstrual cycle, where I start to doubt myself, and I'll have self-deprecating thoughts like, who's going to listen to your podcast?
Yeah.
Who are you to think that you can do this? There's so many other people out there doing it. And those come in, and the way that I get over those is, I'm really lucky that I have a supportive partner, and supportive, I'm very, I guess, thoughtful with the people that I surround myself with now. And I know that they're going to be like expanders for me. Like, they're a positive mind frame. They're not going to bring me down. We're not going to talk about negative things and shit talk people. So I mean, what's your way of dealing with it when you have self-doubt?
I think a big thing for me that I'm even learning at the moment is also recognizing when I am like having self-doubt.
Hmm.
Um, I I think obviously how like surrounding yourself with people who have a positive impact on you is super important. Whether that's like your partner or your friends or your family or whoever, that has a massive impact.
Hmm.
Um, People who lift you up. But I think for me, one, it's recognizing when it's happening. So sometimes I'll be like, oh, I feel really stuck. I don't really know what to do about this problem. And then I kind of start snowballing and just focusing on like one negative after another. And then I
Mm.
end up feeling even worse. So I think it's like the first step for me is just realizing when I'm doing that. And then just trying to focus on the positives, almost laugh at myself for like focusing on the negatives and kind of make light of that. Um, and I think reflecting on like all the things that you have done is really helpful.
Mm.
So I, and this is a bit of a strange example, but it's really helped. So I was trying to raise investment at the moment, and one of the ways that I was recommended to try and do that was to post on LinkedIn of like updates of what's happening with the business. And so what that has made me do is every, few weeks sit down and really think about, okay, what have I done in the last few weeks that's exciting and that I've achieved that I can show that we're making progress with the business.
Mm.
And it's so helpful because every time when I go to like write a list of stuff that's happened, I'm always like, I can't think of anything. I'm like, I don't know what I've done. I start to have a bit of a panic, like I'm not progressing enough. And then I'll look back through my diary and like the meetings that I've had and like actually start to think about, oh yeah, actually this happened and that was really good. And that really helps to kind of quieten down that like negative voice. So I think really focusing on the things that you are achieving and not always like looking for the next thing, and taking those moments to actually like just enjoy the progress that you have made is really important. um,
Mm.
which is really hard to do because I don't think it comes naturally to a lot of people because we're always like, okay, right, that's done. Even though you've been striving for ages to get that done, you're then like, okay, what's the next thing I need to do? And you don't actually enjoy
100%.
that you've actually achieved that thing that was taking you ages to do, which is
Uh,
easier said than done. But
No, honestly, I wanted to the whole time I was thinking, oh my God, I wanted to say something, but I was just like, no, I want to
no,
listen
no,
to
go, go,
you.
go.
No, but I was just thinking, like, honestly, I couldn't relate to that more. And like, I've been having those discussions a lot where we don't celebrate ourselves,
Yeah,
like even the small wins. And as you say, like, what a great exercise that you've been posting those on LinkedIn. And without that, you wouldn't have been able to reflect on how much you're actually doing.
yeah,
Um, and it is all about, because even with, I mean, with clothes, everything's fast fashion. With takeaways now, you can get it quickly. Cabs, you can get it now. Everything is so quick. And like when you're trying to build a business, a brand, a career, whatever you want to be doing, we
mm,
expect it to be so quick.
yeah,
Um, and I think that's just the society that we're in. But rather than enjoying the process of getting to that end goal, because once you're at the end goal, then what?
yeah.
And I
And I
think,
think
yeah, there you go.
I was just gonna say, I think as well, like comparing yourself to other people is like the worst thing. And I know we always say this, but again, sometimes I will like there's other people who are way further along and they have successful businesses and um I follow them for like inspiration, but sometimes I'll be like, oh God, like they did all this in like 1 year and I'm still trying to get investment and it feels like I'm doing it really slowly. um so I think that is a thing to like try and not do.
Mm.
And again, it's one of those things that you do without even realizing it. uh, and everyone always says this, but what people post is always the best of what they're doing. So you might look at like someone's post and be like, oh wow, it sounds like they're doing loads, but they've probably done the same as me and sat down and been like, I don't know what I'm doing, and then made a like, list which sounds amazing, but actually there's a lot of like hard work and things that aren't going well as well behind that. So I
Mm.
think if you ever catch yourself like making yourself doubt yourself because you're comparing yourself to other people, that's a really dangerous thing as well, because you have no idea what what help they've had, or like what's going on in their lives, or what issues they've got. So you just can't compare yourself to other people. And I wish I could like play this back to myself like every day, because I definitely do it all the time.
I'll edit that clip out and send it to you. So you need
Yeah.
to watch it.
Yeah.
It'll be your positive affirmation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more on that as well. I'd say one of my biggest downfalls is comparing myself to others. And I listened to this really amazing podcast, which is by this guy named Rob Dial, and he's like this mindset mentor. Quite like an American dude, like, very self-help vibes, but really I found it quite transformative when listening to him. But he did this, like, I don't know, it just clicked where he was just like talking about staying in your own lane. And like,
Mm.
I was driving to work one day in my car, and I was just thinking, I was just seeing all these different cars, like in the, driving in different lanes. And I was just like, oh my God, like everyone is doing their own thing, and they are
Mm.
like, the main character of their life. And I'm not just gonna go and grab, like, veer into their lane and smash into them, because that's not my lane. And
Yeah.
like, whatever I'm doing, I am doing in my lane, and I'm staying in it, and I will do it at the pace that it happens for me, and the same for you, and the
Mhm.
same for anyone else out there. And I think that's really helped me to like visualize it a little bit more. But of course, it still seeps back in when you see you see something on Instagram or social media, and you're just like, oh man, that cuts deep a little bit.
Yeah.
Um but also I think, like, having that feeling of like maybe a little bit of resentment or jealousy is something I'm really trying to work through as well, and trying to be like, actually, like, find genuine happiness from within, because
Yeah.
they've obviously worked really hard to get to that position. And like, well done to you, like, hopefully, and I know that I will find that at some point. And having that kind of genuine feeling, that shift of feeling,
Yeah.
is where it
Definitely.
can kind of change that space.
Yeah.
um but yeah, okay, cool. So self-doubt, there we go.
Yeah.
um so I mean, obviously, your driving force, I was going to start speaking about what the kind of driving force of your business is.
Mm.
If you could sum that up, what would it be?
I think the real driving force behind it for me is all about sustainability. And so, sustainability for the people and the planet is what I'm really passionate about. Um, but I think so that's what drives me with it. So I'm working with designers who are really passionate about sustainability. We all have the same goal, that we want to make these changes. But I think for people who use it, it will be about that creativity. So bringing that personal touch back into fashion, um, working with the designers directly, because I think fashion is always going to be a really massive industry. People love it; they love the self-expression and the creativity of just choosing your outfit. But if you can create it as well, I think that will be the unique driving force that pushes the business forward. So I think it's a different, for me personally, it's about the sustainability. But I think for people who use it, it will be about the creativity.
Mm, definitely. And I can't wait to start designing as well on it. It's going to be awesome. Got so many dresses and weddings that I want to design for. So, um, I was also going to start talking about, I know you mentioned briefly about the fact that you've had therapy.
Hmm.
In order to kind of get to this shift, did you, do lots of inner work? Was there like a process there, or did it kind of happen quite naturally? Or I know you said a little bit out of necessity, but was
Hmm.
there, anything in particular that you found self-help wise that really helped you to shift your mindset?
Um, I think it's a good question. I've never really thought about it. To be honest, I think mentally I hit a really bad place. And so I had to seek therapy just to get out of it. And at the time, when I look back, I didn't really think it was doing that much, but I think it had a really massive impact on me. So I think for me, it was like catastrophizing things. And I think a really something that I always try to remind myself as well is that I think you mentioned it earlier as well, about you have these stories that you tell yourself of like who you are or who you
Mm,
want to be, but actually no one has to stick in these like storylines that we tell ourselves, like you're completely unique and like you don't need to follow these patterns, like you don't have to do something because you think that's what the person you want to be would do, like you can do anything. um so I think I had CBT therapy that was really helpful for um like stepping back and being like, okay, what's real, what actually happened in that situation that I feel so bad about, and what are like the different um I'm probably explaining this really bad,
Not at
but
all.
I'd have an experience and then I'd feel really bad about it afterwards. But then thinking about, okay, what actually happened and what are the other different ways that people could perceive it was really helpful.
Mm,
Um, and then I think from that, like meditating really helps me. Um, Especially like with anxiety, it's really like nice to take time out and just like Headspace, I'm sure everyone uses it, but they always have like really helpful like daily tips of things to like think about, like for example the storylines. um I don't know, I think it was just I was in a really bad place and like very kind of broken, and I think it was kind of good in a way because then I could rebuild myself with much healthier habits and routines and ways of thinking.
no,
Makes
I
sense.
think, yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think, I don't know, it does. I don't know. I heard this quote the other day, and it can be quite cliche. And I was telling it to another friend of mine who's going through something at the moment. But it was like a seed has to completely like break and,
Mm.
in order to turn into a flower. And I thought that was like really a good representation of sometimes when life feels like really, really dark and you're like, I don't have any idea what the future holds for me, and maybe mental health is really bad, your situation is bad as well. Like sometimes life does just kick you in the arse and it's just like, right, okay, what are you gonna do now? Like if you've been living a life that's inauthentic and you've stuck in these repetitive patterns that we all get stuck in because we're still trying to figure out who the hell we are. um and as you say, like, even once we find out who we are, we don't need to stay as that person forever, but it almost feels as though like we pigeonhole ourselves in these little boxes. It's like, I'm
Mhm.
Daisy, I'm a little bit introverted, or I'm Emily, and like sometimes I will be a bit loud and annoying, or do you know what I mean? And yeah, you pigeon yourself with these like perceptions that you think other people have of you. But
Yeah.
actually just letting go of that burden and being like, well, actually, that's not really who I am. Like, if I strip everything back, I'm just Emily and you're
Mm.
just Daisy. And, and I'm finding out more. And I think that's so for listeners, I think that's a really important point. So if you're feeling like, maybe you're in a group of friends where you're the jokey one and you have to bring that energy all the time, and you're the one who'll do the forfeits at the pub, or the one who's going to be the binge drinker and bring all the alcohol, but you don't really feel like that's aligned with who you are anymore. Then it's okay to say, actually, guys, I'm not doing that anymore. I'm going to do something else with my time. And your real friends will stick around because they want
Mhm.
to kind of grow with you. So I think that's a really important message, and thank you for sharing that, Daisy. Um, so this is quite a bold question, and I don't know if you're gonna be able to like have it in your head straight away, but I wanted to ask, what's the best advice you've ever received?
Yeah. Yeah, when I saw that question, I was like, oh my God, that's such a big one. And I've been trying to think of it. Do you know what? Nothing came to mind as like one big thing.
Yeah.
But I think there's things that people have told me along the way that resonate with you at different times. So I think that storyline one has been a massive one for me. Um, and then I think a few like other little ones came into my mind, and they might be a bit random, but for me as well, there's like, if you don't ask you don't get. I feel like for me, um I really feel uncomfortable asking people for things, um but then when you start to like put yourself out there, you have to, because otherwise you're not going to get anywhere unless people help you and support you. So I think that has been a really good piece of advice for me personally, because I'm like, well, what's the worst that can happen? Like, I'm worried that I'm going to look stupid, or that they'll say no, they don't want to help me, or like they don't want to do something. But if you don't ask, you'll never know. And it's always going to be more positive if they say yes. And if they say no, it doesn't really matter. So that's been a
Mm.
massive learning for me. Um, and then I think as well, just about like collaborating with people, like that's been a massive thing to help bring change into my life, is like choosing who you spend your time with, and that you don't owe anyone anything. Like it's your life. Like it's up to you who you spend your time with, and you'll know if you're with the wrong people.
Mhm.
um, and then also like just discussing ideas with people, I think is really key to
Mm.
like driving change and learning new things. So
Yeah.
yeah, but not one. What I really wanted to have was like one really nice, really like powerful like piece of advice, but I couldn't think of anything.
The thing is, though, I think all of those are amazing, like realistic as well. Like all of those, what you've mentioned, I feel as though I've kind of been adopting those same kind of processes as well, like saying no to more things, not
Yeah.
feeling like not having anxiety about not showing up 100% of the time for everybody else, because sometimes we're not showing up for ourselves. So that needs to take like front and center for me now, and it seems like it does for you. And that's like a huge shift when people around you are like, okay, cool, she's doing her own thing. It doesn't mean that she doesn't like me, but it just means that she's working on herself right now, and she's got some goals that she wants to get to. And as an entrepreneur like you, um you got a hell of a lot to do, and also you're trying to see your partner, your family. There's life's busy. So yeah, I think they were all fantastic points. Thank you so much for sharing, and I hope you found it helpful, audience. So I wanted to finish up the show today. If there was anything you wanted to leave the listeners with in terms of the work that you're doing at the Loom App, any exciting I guess progressions coming up, and what can we expect from you in the future? We'll hold you accountable as well, so this will
Yeah.
also be
Good, that's what I need. Um, so at the moment we are testing and trialing the website to make it as super simple and beautiful as we can. So I think around October time, we're going to do like an official launch. So that's probably when you'll start to hear more about it. But until then, if anyone wants anything custom made, please come to me, because I will do anything in my power to make it happen. So if you have any ideas or any questions, please just reach out to me. And yeah, I'll try and help your vision come to life.
Yay. Also, I have to ask, is that top custom made?
No, it's not.
Fuck.
No, it's actually a dress. No, I should have worn something, shouldn't I?
It's
But
fine.
you could get something made like this if you're
Exactly. I was
inspired
thinking, I
by
was
it.
like, I love the shoulders on that. I was like, so gorgeous. Well, honestly, it's been really lovely, reconnecting with you back on air for the listeners to hear. I always was, drawn to you as a person, Daisy, because I just think you're so pure, like so loyal and lovely, and yeah, and I'm really, really happy that you're doing so well. And I'm so excited to see the future of the Loom Map.
Oh, thank you. And yeah, likewise. I think everything you're doing with the podcast as well, it's really scary to do that and put yourself out there like that. So yeah, it's very inspiring. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's been my absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Can't wait to hang out.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Take care. Bye.